So one of the things that I think about is what does it actually mean if you are a top performer in a particular category? I think this is an interesting sort of business lesson or thing that sort of reflects on what's going on. And the sort of direct one-to-one relationship is that they are somehow better, right? So if you're a top performer, if your performance and however you might measure it. So for example, you might measure how much money you actually bring in, and you might say that, hey, this person is a top performer because they bring in a lot of money. But what the key thing of a lot of research in this area shows is that there this relationship between having a top performance does not correlate with actual skill in terms of what's going on. There is a loose correlation. In fact, there's probably a moderate correlation between the two. In that, yes, there is a relationship between doing well and getting top performance or getting higher performance on average across individuals. However, if you look at top performers in a particular area, or if you look at even the worst performers in a particular area, there's not a very good relationship between the two. And there's lots of reasons for this. The sort of thing that I focus on and I think about the most is top performers often are reflecting on how good that they actually are and sort of capturing that performance metric, right? So you might be thinking of teach to the test, for example. Um, Teachers having very good teaching ratings might be very good at teaching to those teaching ratings or teaching to the test that is being tested. Often I think about in the classroom is if you want people to do well on a particular test, then you should just look at their grade on how well they did in the test. But there's often a lot of great individuals that don't perform the same degree on tests as they do as just functioning human beings, right? Like there's a lot of people in your life that clearly they are just functioning very well and they sort of have a robust um, you know, sort of human functioning. I don't know what you'd call it, but just they function very well, right? Like they're sort of adaptable. They have sort of moderate level self-esteem, not high, not low. That they sort of are coachable, all sorts of things like that. And yet, if you were to look on sort of test performance, often those individuals don't do well for various different reasons. Stress and anxiety, maybe that they're so focused on doing well in other areas, it's hard to sort of maximize on the one particular key thing on that particular grade. There's lots of different things that go on, and we need to observe those and think about them and put them into perspective, right? It's not necessarily just about a single objective. It's not just about looking at um, how somebody might just do well on one single test at one given time. What you need to look at, and it's not like their extended performance over the long run, because the extended performance in the long run might exhibit, things like they're just born into different positions and things. And so you have to be very careful and thoughtful um, in terms of how you're assessing performance. It's not clear at all, right? And that's why that there's a lot of benefits by just having conversations, and not always. This just makes it even more difficult, right? Like some people, even though they're awkward to talk to and they might not do well in an interview, you might think of them as like, um, but they might perform spectacularly well in specific roles or in a different, in a different day. Like it's very difficult, is what I'm saying. Um, and I am a believer that most people will rise to the challenge, not always, but many people rise to the challenge when faced with it. And you can't just look at one particular thing, or you can't just look at how somebody presents on paper. We have all heard of the story, they look good on paper, but when you actually get to know them, they're really not. Um, so, what I'm getting at is don't just uh, don't just think about just metrics and numbers and those kind of things, and really think about reading between the lines. It's not always the case that there's something going on, and you might sort of think that there is a relationship often between how well people perform in a test and sort of their skills and capabilities. But just be aware, know that it's not a direct relationship. There's all sorts of evidence in so many different domains. This is simply not true. That there is a robust 100% correlation between how somebody performs on a certain test or series of tests or criteria and their underlying skill level, which is based on um, um, old sort of methodology. The sort of state of the art suggests there's just nuance, and there's not a clear like this is what we should do. But what the evidence suggests, or what I sort of think about, is that you just use your head, right? Like if people are being strictly by the numbers, um, just use your head. It's often not the case, and there's you just have to use your head, use your heart often in terms of figuring out who somebody is. Are they well intentioned? Are they, trying to be nice? Are they trying? Lots of things like that. And there's just a lot of fuzziness, and it's not clear. But that's life. There's never like a clear cut relationship between something and something else. It never happens that way. We have to sort of disentangle and say, what you observe is not always what's generating the data generating process, right? And that's the important thing to think about. And actually, to give you a sort of, this happens in science all the time. This is like, true. But if you think in general about data generating of the solar system, people used to use that very strictly, and they'd see all sorts of circles and things like that, and they couldn't explain how the solar system worked because we thought everything revolved around the Earth. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.